Welcome back to the channel, SD fans, and today I'm going to be talking about diving in cold water, or more specifically, why I do it. Living here in the UK, one of the questions I get asked all the time is, why do you dive here? Isn't the water cold, murky, green, and so on? So I thought I would take the opportunity to dispel some of the myths surrounding cold water diving and the equipment that is needed to be able to do it comfortably. This month's videos are sponsored by Seiko, who have been producing quality dive watches since way back in 1965, and many of their innovations are still seen today across other brands. Living here in the UK, if I want to go diving regularly, I have to dive in our local waters, be that off the coastline or at an inland dive site. Now, when I started way back diving in the 1980s, all my diving was done in the UK. And believe it or not, I didn't actually venture abroad into warmer conditions until the mid-1990s. I know, right? Fast forward to now, and I still love diving in our waters. Given the choice, I would prefer a dive in the sea, purely because of the marine life that is present right from the shoreline. But alas, sometimes the weather over here can be, shall we say, downright lousy. And so when it's blowing a hoolie and coastal sites are blown out, then at least inland sites, which are a far more static environment, mean you can still get wet. Regardless of where you end up diving in UK waters, you're going to want to dive in the appropriate exposure protection. Now, don't get me wrong, you might get away with a semi-dry in the summer months, if you're a hardy soul. But to be honest, I dive in a dry suit all year round to be warm and comfortable. And this is where I start getting the questions. So, let's break it down. One of the first questions I inevitably get asked is, isn't the water cold? Well, yes, it is. In the summer, surface temperatures might get up to 16 to 18 degrees C, but once you get a few meters down, that can drop very quickly. In the winter, water temperatures are low single digits. Last week, in my local quarry site, it was just 6 degrees C. So there's no getting away from the fact that the water is chilly. But that is why you wear the right equipment. With a base layer, undersuit and dry suit, and then a decent hood and gloves, I'm toasty warm for a good hour or so, even in winter water temperatures. It's all about choosing the right gear for the job in hand. The next question is usually, but what is there to see? And while our waters can appear a bit green and murky from the top side on occasion, there is still much to enjoy beneath the surface, and visibility can reach well into double figures if you are lucky. Many inland sites have sunk boats, buses, airplanes and more as attractions for divers, and several here have a healthy population of fish, including trout, perch, pike and even massive sturgeon. But it is in the sea where you can really go to town. Here, even in just a few meters, you can be surrounded by vivid hues of green, red, orange and yellow, as well as various shades of brown from the seaweed, kelp and algal growth. In amongst this constantly moving environment, you will encounter crabs, lobster, shrimp, gobies, blennies, pollock, wrasse, jellyfish, dogfish, even tiny nudibranchs. The number of people who I have taken for a shore dive in the UK, and we've never even broken 5 meters in depth, yet they have come out with wide eyes saying, I never knew there was so much life in our waters. So just because the water is a tad chilly, doesn't mean there isn't lots to see. Once you get further out to sea and gain a bit more depth, then you can also explore any number of shipwrecks, often in a very ship-shaped condition, not to mention submarines, aircraft, and much more. You can also dive with seals, blue sharks, even giant-sized basking sharks. So, when people ask me, what is there to see? I sometimes don't even know where to start. Another common query is, how do you dive in all that equipment? And to be fair, I can understand where that one might come from, especially if someone is not a diver at all or has only ever dived in warmer conditions where they have only been in a wetsuit. or maybe even board shorts and a rash guard. Believe me, things are much easier these days as technology and materials have seriously moved on, and dry suit diving is no longer as daunting as it once used to be. Dry suits come in two basic guises: neoprene and trilaminate, or membrane as it's also known. Neoprene suits are usually quite form-fitting, and because of their inherent stretch, they can flex as you move. The neoprene construction offers a degree of thermal protection by itself, like a wetsuit, though you will still need to layer up with thermal undergarments when you venture into particularly cold waters. These days, neoprene suits are often compressed or crushed, which basically means it's been through a process to reduce or remove the tiny bubbles that are found in neoprene. These can compress at depth, meaning that your buoyancy is affected throughout your dive. So by crushing or compressing a neoprene before constructing the suit, this characteristic is reduced. Neoprene suits are still heavier and more bulky than their trilaminate counterparts. But should the worst happen and you puncture a hole through your suit, neoprene suits are usually easier to do a quick fix on when you're out in the field. Now, back in the day, neoprene suits could be some 7mm thick with no compression, and so you inevitably ended up walking around with your arms out to the side. I used to have people saying I had the diver walk, but that was just how the suit held me in place. You used to do something, like look at your gauge, and then as soon as you relaxed, you were back in shape. Anyone who's dived in a suit like that will know what I'm talking about. Thankfully, new neoprene suits no longer have this characteristic and are far easier to live with on a day-to-day basis. Trilaminate suits, as the name suggests, are made from 3 layers of material, usually a durable outer, a waterproof middle, and a soft, comfortable inner. However, you can also get dual material versions or even those made from 4 or more layers. Thanks to their construction, these suits are very quick drying, and they don't present any buoyancy issues due to the compression of the material they are made from. A downside is the fact there is next to no thermal insulation in the suits themselves, so you will have to wear appropriate undergarments. And due to the nature of the material, they tend to be a little looser fitting than the equivalent neoprene suits. Now, some of the first membrane suits I dived in felt more like being in a thick garbage bag. There was little shape to them, it has to be said, and air migration was an absolute nightmare. But now trilaminate and membrane suits are quite form-fitting, especially the ones with telescopic torsos, so this isn't such an issue anymore. And they're so easy to bend and move around in, it is almost like being in a 3mm wetsuit in terms of mobility. Once you have your dry suit, you're going to need some thermal protection to wear under it. Now, if you're wearing your neoprene suit in the middle of summer, for instance, then you could probably get away with something relatively lightweight, like a base layer. However, that is the beauty of dry suits, regardless of type. You can alter what you wear underneath according to the temperature of the waters you're diving in and how much you feel the cold personally. You can add vests on top of base layers as the temperature starts to drop, and when it gets to a certain level, you can ramp it up to a thicker undersuit. These can then be combined with base layers if we are talking really cold, like the Arctic or Iceland. If you really feel the cold yourself, then you might want to draft in some technological help to keep warm. Several firms make heated vests and suits, which take undergarment thermal protection to a whole new level. There really is nothing else that can compare with that feeling of battery-operated heat when you're in seriously chilly conditions. You can even get heated glove liners to go inside dry gloves. Now that is the ultimate way to avoid frozen fingers. So, diving in a dry suit with all of the accompanying undersuits, etc., is no longer the daunting prospect it perhaps used to be, or rather was perceived as being. I never had a problem diving in dry suits and switching back and forth between dry suits and wetsuits. But I will admit, it is far easier diving in a modern dry suit. Now, I've been talking about dry suit diving from a predominantly UK perspective. But remember, there is cold water diving all over the planet where using a dry suit can open up whole new areas to be explored. In North America, for instance, you have the diving off the east and the west coasts of Canada, as well as in the Great Lakes in the centre of the country themselves. And then in the US, you've got the Great Lakes and even off California. A dry suit is a more comfortable option for keeping warm on your dives. Wreck divers off the US East Coast also employ dry suits to keep them warm on longer, deeper dives. In Australia, a country more associated with warm water diving, there are regions in the south where a dry suit is the sensible option, along with many areas of New Zealand. You can even dive in a dry suit in locations where you might actually be fine in a semi-dry suit, or even a thicker wetsuit, as there are many advantages. You won't need as much lead as you would with a thick neoprene wetsuit, and you will undoubtedly be warmer on the surface between dives, and a thin membrane dry suit can often be lighter than a thick wetsuit, so you won't eat up as much of your precious luggage allowance. In the Galapagos, for instance, a lightweight travel dry suit lets you dive in both tropical and temperate waters. You can just wear the dry suit over a thin base layer in the warmer water, and then you can don more layers when you head into the cooler stuff. I have also worn a dry suit in the winter months in Egypt's Red Sea. Now, the water temperature drops to the low to mid-20s centigrade, which can be dealt with quite easily by wearing a 5mm wetsuit and maybe a hooded vest. But when you get out of the water and you're sat on a Zodiac heading back to your liveaboard, or you're stood on the dive deck of your day boat, when the wind starts to blow, it can be seriously chilly. You don't have any issues in a dry suit. You just lock off your dump valve, pump a bit of gas into your suit, and then you can sit there looking all smug while your fellow divers start to shiver. So, what's the takeaway from this video? Well, basically, don't discount cold water and dry suit diving, even if you are a hardcore warm water diver. There are many fantastic dive sites that can be explored in comfort when you don the right exposure protection, and it would be a crying shame for you to miss out on some of them because of an irrational fear of dry suits and or cold water. Yes, admittedly, cold water diving in a dry suit does involve more equipment, and yes, it does present its own challenges, but nothing is insurmountable. So my advice, if you get the chance to try a spot of cold water diving, give it a go. Who knows, you might actually enjoy yourself. Are you a dedicated cold water diver? What are some of your hints and advice for someone new to dry suit diving and venturing into colder waters? Leave your comments below, and if you've got a query, fire away. Because if we can't answer it, someone in our growing community might be able to help you out. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and ring that notification bell so that you know when we put up a new video. And don't forget, you can grab a free digital magazine subscription in the description below. As always, stay safe. And if you're going diving in cold waters or somewhere warmer, stay safe. Enjoy.